Before the Silk Road, before the great empires of India and Persia clashed for dominance, there was a forgotten people nomads who once roamed the icy steppes beyond the Great Wall of China. They were pushed, scattered, and nearly destroyed. But from this crucible of defeat, they rose, transforming from tribal horsemen into empire builders who would control one of the most critical crossroads in human history. The Yuezhi first appear in Chinese records around the 2nd century BCE. They were nomads, herders, and warriors living in the Gansu Corridor, a narrow passage linking China to Central Asia. Their society revolved around mobility, horseback riding, and pastoral traditions. Living on the fringes of the Chinese cultural sphere, they were both traders and threats. But to the north and east, the Xiongnu loomed fierce, organized, and aggressive. The Xiongnu Confederation had grown into a formidable steppe empire that saw the Yuezhi as competitors. The collision between these two groups was inevitable. Around 176 BCE, this confrontation reached its climax. The Xiongnu defeated the Yuezhi in a brutal campaign. According to Chinese chronicles, the Xiongnu killed the Yuezhi king and turned his skull into a ceremonial drinking cup. This act wasn't just barbaric, it was symbolic. It marked the utter humiliation of the Yuezhi. What followed was an exodus. Defeated and displaced, the Yuezhi began a long migration westward. They traversed the harsh deserts of the Tarim Basin, crossing treacherous mountains and arid steppes. Many perished, but those who survived would find a new destiny in the region of Bactria. Bactria, once part of Alexander the Great's empire, had become a melting pot of Hellenistic and Asian cultures. It was home to Greek-speaking elites, Persian traditions, and the rising influence of Buddhism. Into this fractured land came the Yuezhi, no longer merely nomads, but hardened survivors. The Yuezhi did not pillage Bactria blindly. They adapted. They married into local elites, adopted aspects of Hellenistic administration, and respected the religious mosaic they encountered. Over time, they replaced the Greco-Bactrian rulers, establishing their own domains. But instead of remaining scattered tribes, they began to unite. Among the 5 major Yuezhi clans, one rose to dominance: the Kushans. Around 30 CE, Kujula Kadphises emerged as a powerful leader who consolidated these clans into a unified polity. He declared himself ruler not just of the Yuezhi, but of a new empire that straddled the ancient worlds of Persia, India, and Central Asia. Under Kujula and his successors, the Kushans expanded rapidly. They crossed the Hindu Kush and moved into the Indus Valley. In cities like Taxila and Mathura, they established administrative centers that blended Greek, Persian, and Indian influences. Art, language, and architecture flourished under their rule. Trade became their lifeline. They controlled critical segments of the Silk Road networks that connected the Han Dynasty in China with the Roman Empire in the West. Silk, spices, lapis lazuli, jade, and gold flowed across Kushan lands. With this wealth came power, and with power came cultural transformation. The Kushans became more than merchants. They became patrons of religion and guardians of sacred spaces. Buddhism, especially the Mahayana branch, received extensive support. Kushan emperors funded monasteries, erected stupas, and hosted Buddhist councils that shaped doctrine and scripture. Kanishka the Great, perhaps the most iconic Kushan ruler, became a legend. His reign around 127 CE saw the apex of Kushan power. His capital at Peshawar thrived. His court welcomed scholars and monks from across Asia. He minted coins in gold that bore the images of Hindu gods, Greek deities, and Zoroastrian figure symbols of an empire that embraced diversity. But it wasn't just religious or economic influence that marked the Kushan Empire. It was their ability to connect worlds. Roman amphorae have been found in Kushan sites. Chinese silk routes referenced Kushan territories. The empire served as a bridge not just of trade, but of ideas and technologies. As centuries passed, however, the strength of the empire waned. Internal divisions and external threats grew. The Sassanids rose in Persia, the Gupta Empire gained momentum in India, and the Silk Road began to shift its arteries away from traditional Kushan centers. By the mid-3rd century, the once great empire began to fracture. Smaller kingdoms replaced imperial unity. Some Kushan rulers survived in name, but their influence had eroded. The story of the Yuezhi faded from popular memory, but their legacy remained in art, in coins, in sacred texts. The Gandharan sculptures, fusing Greek realism with Buddhist spirituality, bear testament to the cultural synthesis they championed. The Mahayana Sutras, spread under their patronage, transformed the religious landscape of Asia. In the Chinese chronicles, the Yuezhi were remembered more as a shadow people who vanished westward, but their journey reshaped the balance of power in ancient Asia. They indirectly influenced the course of Indian religion, the flow of trade goods, and even diplomatic relations between Rome and Han China. Interestingly, a delegation sent by the Kushans once met the Roman Emperor Trajan, proof of how far their diplomatic network extended. Imagine, from a people cast out of their homeland to envoys negotiating at the very edges of Europe. Modern archaeological finds continue to unearth their story. From the ruins of Ai-Khanum to the coins stamped with bilingual inscriptions, the Yuezhi left traces of a multicultural empire, one that didn't erase local traditions but absorbed them. Their coins often bore Greek script on one side and Bactrian on the other. Their statues wore Indian robes and Persian crowns. Their temples housed Greek columns and Buddhist relics. They were a hybrid empire, perhaps one of the first to thrive not in spite of diversity, but because of it. The story of the Yuezhi and their rise to power as the Kushan Empire is more than a tale of conquest. It is a lesson in adaptation, in survival, and in embracing the complex nature of human civilization. In a world where empires rise and fall, often remembered only for their wars and ruins, the Yuezhi offer a different model, one rooted in synthesis rather than supremacy. They remind us that history is not just made by kings and generals, but by the displaced, the forgotten, the ones who journey far from home and build something new. They were once exiles, then they became emperors. Now they are echoes still shaping the currents of Asian history, long after their empire crumbled to dust. Through the Historia Lens, we remember the Yuezhi not just as a footnote in ancient chronicles, but as architects of a cultural and commercial renaissance that bridged continents. If you found this story compelling, subscribe for more deep dives into the untold histories of Asia, where forgotten empires still echo through time.